morning.
It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the second of the three exciting events celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Accompanying degrees at Eastman. Permit me to introduce myself. I'm Jean Barr. As we were contemplating, first of all, this is the time for me to acknowledge the behind-the-scenes effort of Sylvie. Where are you? It was Sylvie who came up with the idea of this reunion in the first place. It was she who persuaded the folks in development and advancement that this was going to be a great idea. And from then to now, that's why you're all here. So Sylvie, as we plan the events to celebrate the Accompanying program, it was clear that we should celebrate the current students and that we should also celebrate the alums. So you will notice that between this morning's panel and this afternoon's concert, there are quite a number of different people involved. Very little overlap. A couple just had to be, but. And what did I hope today will accomplish? I think that Eastman is well known. Those of you who are alums or current students will recognize the fact that Eastman has always had a sense of camaraderie, of mutual respect. You're gone and you find Eastman graduates everywhere. There's something about this place. Maybe it's because we're geographically challenged. I don't know. but indeed, I think we develop community here. That's not to say we don't elsewhere. And I think it is the community that brings us together today, all of us, not just the accompanying folks, alums, students. So what I hoped today was going to accomplish was to give our current students hope for their future. What I did this. One of the alums told me that they were gathering around before we started and contemplating whether their career trajectories were up or down. And I figured, no, they're circuitous. Yes, that's more likely. So what I hope will happen this morning, I have to play traffic cop and my cataracts were supposed to make it easier to see. Yeah, I got them fixed. But I have to take my glasses off to read my watch, so forgive me. I'm going to try to keep us on time. You will notice in your program, there are 5 sections of careers, and I will ask each group to come up. Each individual on the panel will get a chance to have about 2 minutes. Everything's way too short, but 2 minutes to talk about their career paths to the present from Eastman. Then we'll open this up. I particularly want to have more time for questions from the audience, most especially for questions from the current students. And that means even not just accompanying majors, but if there are any other students in the audience, please feel free to ask questions of anybody on this list. The handout is supposed to give you an idea of who the heck they are, and give you an idea of what they might be talking about. So my hope for this morning can best be summed up in what a current student asked me at his lesson this week. Christian, raise your hand. Out of the clear blue, Christian asked me, what inspires me? And I didn't miss too many beats before I said possibility. And that's what I hope will inform today. Thank you for being here, and let's begin. First group of panelists. I will apologize in advance that I am not going to introduce these people other than by name, so you associate what you read with the basics. So from your left to right, we have Sumi Park. I had to think about all of these people in their multiple names I can't quite remember. Next to Sumi is Maria Binet, and next to Maria is Matt Roden. So let's start with you, Sumi, if you would. I'd like you to talk about how you think Eastman might have prepared you, and are you enjoying what you do at present, and tell them what you're doing.
Okay. So first of all, I was one of the first of the 4 graduate students in the Accompanying program. I started as a master's student, and then I liked it so much that I decided to stay for the DMA. And I graduated in 1995, and in the middle of my DMA, I got married and moved to California. And while I was finishing my DMA, I was able to get a job as a vocal coach in the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. So I enjoyed doing that for 3 years. And then eventually I got this job at Stanford as a vocal coach and staff collaborative pianist. And that's my present job right now. And I feel that the years, I was here for 4.5 years for coursework, and then I came back for exams, and I really feel that it has prepared me very well for the collaborative play that I do, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Maria.
Well, I finished my coursework 10 years ago exactly.
Oh my.
Yes.
I'm glad.
Yes. And I did some research the last semester that I was here, because I knew that I had to start looking for work. So one of the things that I thought of is pick where you want to live and just send a bunch of emails to all these departments, which I did, and I introduced myself to absolute strangers in the email and attached my resume, and I was surprised at how many responses I got. I received a phone call from a university in North Carolina saying, well, actually, you are interested in doing staff accompanist work, which we desperately need, but a full-time faculty position opened up, would you be interested? So that's how I ended up with a full-time faculty job. But at the same time, since staff accompanying, is my passion, I pursued that at the same time. So that's where I've been ever since, for 10 years now.
And Maria is now living in Dallas, Texas area. Pat.
I'll start with a story.
I'd be disappointed if you did.
My wife this morning said, I really hope I could hear you today. And I said, I really wish you could too, because my story is about you mostly. After arriving at Eastman from Kalamazoo, Michigan, I was here by myself for a year. My girlfriend at the time realized we couldn't be apart from each other, so we got married that summer. And when she arrived, she was fortunate enough to get a job here in the Rochester City School District, and has been, of course, wonderfully supportive. I wouldn't be here without her, for sure. Upon my graduation from Eastman, as she was growing in her job, it became pretty clear that we weren't going to leave. You come to Rochester thinking, I'm going to go to school and then I'm going to go back out there. We came to Rochester thinking that maybe, maybe that was going to happen, but we've grown here. So my story is the simplest to tell because I've been here 18 years and haven't left. In that time, I was fortunate enough, just like Maria, to actually have them call me. I got a call from MCC, Monroe Community College down the street, asking me to head up their class piano program for their music majors. And 3 years later, I got a call from our own Eastman Community Music School asking to do the same. And I've been in actually not as much in the collaborative piano field, but more class piano, which was what my assistantship was back in Kalamazoo all along. I still do plenty of accompanying. I've kept, of course, all of my connections here, and I'm meeting new people as more faculty come in, new students come in. Why would I want to leave Rochester? All the great music takes place right here. And if you haven't taken a look at, perhaps when you were here last, it was known as CED. I mean, the program has been around for quite some time, but we really have grown. And what we offer, primarily to middle school and high school students, is exceptional. A typical high school student can graduate from our community ed department with a more or less a college degree equivalency before they even get to college, which gives them a huge leg up. And I just happened to bring a packet. This happens to be on page 4. teaching piano. So pick one of these up, please. They're all around. That's my sales pitch.
Okay,
What can I do else?
now, I have to be, we have exactly an hour and a half. We have 5 groups, so that's 15 minutes per group with a couple of 1 minute left over, 16 minutes per group. So we have time for exactly 4.5 minutes of questions. Who's up first? Yes.
Best advice from any of you for applying for staff pianist positions?
Do you call a lot? Or email?
Email.
Yeah, so I ended up calling a lot of people that I never knew, from recommendations from faculty here, and you just have to be brave and confident and charming.
Large doses of personality, but as I look around this room, personality is not in short supply. All right, other questions? Christopher Reed.
I'm curious, is there anything for any of you that you got out there and thought, oh, I wasn't ready for this, or I didn't think about that when I was in school? So maybe something you weren't prepared for when you left Eastman?
Actually, I would say no. I think that my training here and in previous schools really did me well. I mean, I was freelancing in Michigan before I came here, and after Gene's Tutelage, I realized, what was I doing those 3 years in Michigan? I learned so much more while I was here. So no, I felt very well prepared, and nothing has been quite a shock. Gosh, I hope not.
Well, that's not what
This is know thy materials.
Well, being a staff accompanist can be a very stressful job, particularly time crunch time. You know, about a month before juries is when the students start to hand in their music, way after the deadline. And the same thing in the spring semester. But Eastman does prepare you for those stressful times as well. So I think, I was able to manage it, although I'd rather avoid those situations. But those things, I mean, you expect that out of being a staff accompanist, that you're going to cram 30, 40 pieces at one time.
Big pieces.
Big, like trombone and saxophone. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience?
Can you talk about some of the challenges of finding freelance work when you are in an area that you don't necessarily know that well? Or has that been an experience you've had?
Well, when I left my full-time faculty job in Tyler, Texas. That was where I ended up. And because of my husband's job, we moved to Dallas, which is about a 2.5-hour drive. So of course, I don't know anybody there. So what I did was I pinpointed the schools around the area in Dallas, in North Dallas, just looked everywhere, and then just emailed them and just told them I'm available for a company. If there's a need, I'm available, and I received the phone calls for work. And then from then on, once I joined SMU as their staff accompanist, then I started getting phone calls outside of the school too, because people would call in and say, okay, we're looking for an accompanist. So I ended up doing freelance work as well, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Any other questions?
If you weren't doing music, what would you be doing? Or what would you
Great
want to
question.
be doing?
I have another anecdote if you want. I got a class to go teach.
Yeah, you do.
No, I came into music, into the field of music as a math major. And so that was my first love. And this kind of bit me, the music bug. And the anecdote is this. And I had to convince my parents, who were paying for my undergraduate tuition, wonderful gift, at the time, that I'm going to leave the field of math and go into music. And met with a great amount of resistance from my father especially, who threatened to yank me out of school. But the one quote that my mother never lets me live down is apparently that night I had this conversation. I said, you know, I love music so much I'd do it for free if I could. And she's like, how's that going for you? So I would say maybe I would be in math, but I don't know. I love music so much, I can't imagine my life without it. So it's a tough question.
Very good. I think with that, we will excuse this group. I'd like to mention that Matt rearranged his schedule. He has to teach a class in the Eastman Community Music School in about 13 minutes. So he will leave us and we'll see him later probably.
I'm actually bringing 2 of my sections to the concert at 1:30.
Oh, you're Please join me in thanking these 3 folks and then we'll... Diane Burr from Ithaca College, Deanna Oy from the University of Lethbridge in Lethbridge, Canada, Judy Taylor-Siebert from the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. Good morning, ladies. Okay, so it's Judy Siebert, Deanna Oy, Diane Burr. What's not? Diane. My current studio has 3 Christophers and 1 Christian. I don't get as confused with them as I did years ago when I had at the same time Lyle Indergaard and Kyle Lynchite. They look nothing alike, and I would look at one and call them by the other person's name. So, good morning, ladies. Let's go again. We'll keep going from left to right. You can check them out in your handouts. We'll start with Judy.
Well, the career path from Eastman was fantastic. I just have the best job in the world. It's the 3rd one since I left here. So I spent 1 year as a sessional teacher or a replacement in a university in Ontario, just about 2.5 hours from here. And finished off my last requirements here, which was a lecture recital, but I think it was just I didn't want to leave yet. And so that was my first job, where I was teaching all manner of fill-ins besides the piano class. Then I went to another university in Manitoba called Brandon University and taught there for 5 years. And I'd say that's where my education from here was paid off in spades, because they asked me to teach chamber music, 1/3 piano solo, and 1/3 history and theory. And Eastman always said, we want you to be ready to go anywhere, whatever you have to do, wherever you wind up, you're going to be asked to do other stuff. And that was the first time that I was really happy for Dr. Toom's class. I always enjoyed Headlam's and Betsy Marvin's theory classes. That wasn't as the writing. And I learned so much from those 5 years. I never worked that hard in my life since I left here. And I'd say that what they tell us here is that, you know, yes, it's stressful in your degree, but it's probably going to pay off well, and that is truly so. So my present position is a fabulous one again, and I have nothing but support, both in my actual the things I'm teaching, whatever we initiate gets great support. We have a great dean, super faculty. It's very collaborative. And I work particularly in the degree program, which you can see I was asked to help set up right when I got there. And I didn't know the colleague that I was being put together with at all. And we worked this thing pretty well. We confuse the students a little bit because they go between us half and half, and we don't do anything else, anything for them without consulting each other. And it works extremely well. It's not a huge program, but we feel it's quite intense because it's based on this one. You can ask Chris Taylor.
Judy's student, Chris Taylor. Taylor is now in his first year of this doctoral program.
And Deanna was my first person that I sent here after graduate.
So Deanna Oy.
Okay, so like Judy, after graduating from Eastman, I had 3 jobs, but by contrast, the 3 jobs were the same institution. I went to the University of Lethbridge, which is, for those of you who are not familiar with Canadian geography, is 2 hours south of Calgary in Alberta, kind of nestled between the foothills and prairies. And the opportunity that came to me when I graduated from, actually hadn't graduated yet, still had the comps to do, but when I finished, the coursework was to take a 3-year term position and it was a combination of basically half teaching for the Conservatory of Music at the University of Lethbridge, which is basically the preparatory division, and the other half was to teach in the Department of Music, and it was a combination of piano and musicianship skills. And so I took that position, but it didn't end up lasting 3 years, because what ended up happening was that my colleague in the Department of Music, who had a tenured track position in piano, left for other pastures. And so I was asked to be interim assistant professor in teaching piano. So the position shifted yet again, at which time they conducted during that year a search, and so I ended up with the tenure track position in piano, which is the position I'm in now. And the addition to that now is that I'm chair of the Department of Music, which means that well, life is interesting. I have a colleague who basically said to me one morning as we were talking about things that happen in the middle of the night that the next morning I come back to bite you. So that you find out when you open your email in the morning that suddenly something that you had not even imagined was going to happen has just happened. And she said, you know, Deanna, that's just like having children. Which I don't have at this point. So. And I realized very early on that it was really important to be a good listener and also a good observer. I think the reason why I was able to sort of move through, not that the 3-year position wasn't an absolutely fantastic one to start off with, but it was a temporary position. I think the reason that my position moved into permanency, or that I said that moving into permanency, is that from the outset I made it a point to listen and observe what was going on with the community, the environment in the university, what was needed in the department, and was able to. And I was lucky enough, very lucky, to be able to enter into a department which was at that time dynamic, still is dynamic and open for new faculty to be able to put their mark on the department and then the faculty behind that. So.
Thank you. Diane.
Great. I've been at Ithaca College since I finished my degree here, since that's a long time ago. I was one of the first class, as Sumi was as well. So I'm glad to be back, and 3/4 of us are here, Chris Foley.
I'm going to interrupt you just a minute. Sumi, raise your hand. Chris Foley, raise your hand. And Diane are 3 of the first 4 people admitted to the program in, well, I won't say it. But do that.
How I got to How I got to Ithaca College, I think my best word of advice, and maybe I'm answering a question before I get there, is to, you never know what kind of influence or what kind of interaction you've had in your past will produce something in your future. So I was taking, one of my cognate fields was pedagogy, so I was taking an independent study with Tony Caramia. So I devised this survey to see how much keyboard skills and class piano, or theory keyboard skills and class piano interacted, and how much they were supported or interacted in different various modes. So I sent out this survey, and one of them went to Ithaca College, and it got passed on to someone that I had gone to school with at Indiana University. So out of the blue, I get an email, probably wasn't really up and running yet. I got a call saying, would you be interested in a one-year position? Because, you know, I had done a class piano teaching at Indiana and had other experiences doing it too throughout various scenarios. So I went down there and interviewed for that one-year position. And it became a second year because the person then that I replaced decided to move on. And so it really was connections, and also once you're in a position, if you prove that you're capable of being flexible and meeting the needs of what's going on there, then you'll be looked at for longer term. So it turned into, yes, this position finally became open in a 5-year way, and then finally tenure eligible. So I went through 3 interviews at Ithaca to stay there. And it took a long time before I got my tenure in the first sabbatical, but it's there. So one of the reasons that I decided to stay in Ithaca, even though first my duties were heavy into the secondary piano, was because it's a beautiful city. It's entirely stimulating with Cornell there. And one of the factors that I think comes into play is spouses and family. So I knew that it was a place that my spouse would be entirely happy with, and we have been delighted to be there for the last 20-some years. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Questions? Dawn.
The importance of theory and history has been mentioned a few times. Do you have any suggestions or advice for students who want to prep for potential opportunity for teaching theory classes and secondary piano classes?
Just do the work that you're doing right now, and ask lots of questions about it, because especially from the teaching aspect. But you know, it ties. One of the things that I've remembered very clearly from my theory was with Dr. Headlam's class, and it was not only the theory, but what he taught us in between. And one of the things he said was, Judy, be careful about the toes you step on today, because they're connected to the Daddy kiss tomorrow. So, you know, there was lots of that kind of learning in all my classes, where there's a lot of life skills. But I think as far as just being willing to be open, especially when you go to smaller, if you apply to smaller places. One of the people in my first job in Brandon University, when I was taking a little break and just refreshing, suddenly says to me from behind some wall, just remember, you love teaching history. So I knew I had somebody that was on the panel that was rooting for me, but I just needed to speak up a little bit more about my love of history, wanting to teach that alongside the piano and the chamber music.
So could I just add something to that? I had a friend, a doctoral student, who was a theory composition person, but when they were sending out their CV to look for jobs, among the categories, you know, they had classes taught and things like that. But they also put another category down, classes prepared to teach. And I think it's really, I mean, he went a little bit to the nth degree, but I think if you think about so many schools now, we've hired 3 people in the last 3 years where I'm at, and it's all teach this and secondary area based on your skills. What classes would you feel comfortable teaching? Could you teach freshman year training? Could you teach music history from the Baroque to the classic? I mean, do you understand? Renaissance. As long as you figure out what you think you can do, you can probably do it. Yeah. And I think just being able to show them that you've thought in advance, I'm prepared to teach this and this and this, and I can write marching band drill. Alas, my first job as a staff accompanist, I ended up writing a marching band drill because the GA dropped out and they needed someone to write a drill.
My first job was when they couldn't get anybody to actually count properly. I ended up playing bass drum in the band. I kid you not.
So, but I think if you just sort of think, you know, some of the classes we take here are incredibly specific and in-depth, but if you look at the general things of what you think you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and can put that down on paper, you're going to start to appeal to them, because most of the times when they're hiring, they don't even have a specific goal in mind. We had someone, you know, either theory or history, depending on your background, and then you shuffle faculty around. So if you know what you want to do and can put it out there and what you can do, you're already going to be geared to being put into a place where you feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Any other? Yeah, Wayhan and then Taylor.
As a faculty person, how do you balance your teaching and artistic goals with administrative duties and protocols?
It's a challenge. I know that Deanna is chair of her department. I'm one of 3 chairs in the performance studies, as I just started this summer, and I'm realizing it's really, really challenging. You kind of just do it. I think all of the flexibility and the commitment and the time crunch that you all are going to feel throughout your studies here are not unlike how you will face or what you'll face in the real world. So you develop your approach to how to handle that. And there are going to be the stressful times involved in there, as Maria mentioned, 40 different works. It's tough. I don't know. I still find that I'm still working it out in much of the time. So, but if nothing else, we're flexible, and I think again, the training here already shows you what you have to do, prepares you for that.
Another thing Dr. Barr always said was, you're only as good as the last time you played. And so if you want to keep playing, which I love music like Matt really, so I want to keep doing that. Yet the students will walk through the door all the time. All the chamber music people that need to be coordinated with, which is another one of my jobs. I've coordinated about 120 students into chamber groups and assign the coaches and then provide the recitals. So that's my side job. And when you're trying to do any of these things, of course, one thing is going to be major in front of your face all the time, but you still have that performance coming up in 3 days. So yeah, it's just a juggling act of planning out your days and making. Another thing, you learn not to sleep too much here. That's a really good. I actually have students coming to my door and saying, "Are you going to give us a class on how you don't have to sleep too much?"
I'll just.
I'm sorry.
One more thing, and that is, I think you get more efficient with your practice time. You really do.
Yes.
You find that you can do more in less time. And I think the big thing that fell on my shoulders as of about 5 or 6 years ago, when I finally moved out of the secondary area and went into more of the teaching and collaborative courses, is how much, though, we serve as role models to our students. So every time, as you said, we're on that stage, we're hopefully showing them what we profess in the class, and that's a great responsibility. So I'm very conscious of that, and hoping that every performance is a teaching moment, as they say. Teaching moment. So
Taylor, you had one?
Deanna, my question is mostly for you, since you mentioned being in a dynamic department. So how can you elaborate on how you've gotten to leave your mark on the department?
Well, first, when I had my 3-year position, as I said, that I was fortunate to be in a situation where there was an openness to new faculty initiatives, and one of the first things that I was able to do in that first year was to revamp their accompanying stream, or our accompanying stream, to a series that was required. It was that actually had, it wasn't just a course that you take here and there kind of thing, but actually has a required stream. So that was one of the first things I was able to do there. But in doing that, I was working really closely with my vocal colleagues. I was working really closely with my men's bass percussion colleagues and with my string colleagues to find out what was necessary there. And it was really just basically my first year at the school. So I had to find out just basically what were the strengths of those areas already, what was going to service the department best in my streaming of the courses and what was going to make the curriculum stronger. So from the very beginning of my time at university, I was kind of forced into, but by my choice, into looking at the broader curriculum and making some choices from there, and then presenting and talking over my potential proposal, my initiatives, with my colleagues to get them on board and to also get their input and to develop from there.
May I
Yes, of course,
have
Lizzie,
an
please.
input? As faculty members, it is so important to be good advisors to your students. Advising your students to, as you said, it's important to you to be flexible, but advising your students to be flexible also. For advising them not to just focus on one avenue and be rigid on that, but to be willing to take advantage of your abilities in other areas. I know of some of the faculty members who were not willing to take advantage of other areas where they really should have been helping the school and also doing their part, because they were talented in those areas, but they only wanted to do this. And advising your students to be open, I think, is important.
The chances of you of potentially being in a kind of broader general liberal education institution, such as the one I'm in, are quite large, and it's a really fulfilling situation to be in as well.
Yes.
So for sure, you really need to keep your options open and keep your mind open to what might possibly be out there when you step into your first job.
All right, would you join me in thanking you, please? I'd like to do a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Dean of the Eastman School of Music. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of ladies that I had an opportunity to meet yesterday. Dorothy Gedeke. Dorothy has come here for this weekend from Germany. She lives somewhere between Düsseldorf and Köln. And working with Jesse Kneisel, who you've heard of. See, there's recognition. The Kneisel Leader Competition. Jesse apparently encouraged students to go to Europe and spend a year working in the language, absorbing, and Dorothy was fortunate enough to do that, and then she the subsequent year got a Fulbright to stay on, and then she met her husband, and she hasn't left. But she's and I'm thrilled to welcome you, Dorothy. Another lady I'd like to acknowledge is Lucy Ingram. Lucy is from North Carolina. Her husband and I knew each other at USC. You know, it's amazing, this musical connection.
Yes.
And so I'm delighted to welcome you. Brandon, right? Yeah. Brandon is here. He's interested in the possibility of accompanying, so he's a prospective student, and we're delighted to welcome him. I understood that there were going to be a couple of more students that were interested in, Barry Garver had a couple of current students that she was hoping to join us. Are any of them here? Okay, just for fun, all the alums, please raise your hands. Keep them up. The accompanying alums. Here, sorry, Jamal.
You weren't clear.
Okay, down, current students. Keep your hands up. Accompanying majors, other hands go down.
What?
Oh.
Accompanying majors, keep your hands up. Thank you. And I'd like to point out, you see that the link for this weekend is Plays Well with Others. I would like to publicly acknowledge that the person who created that title is Alexandra Nguyen. Yay! on the faculty of the University of Colorado. Alex was here working at the Eastman School before she attained her present position. And in a couple of summers, we had a short institute, 3 days. It was Alex's brainchild, and it worked wonderfully well, and though we had small registration still. And so I'd like to point out that everything that's been said so far, we all are playing well with others, whether it's actually playing or just playing along with or getting along with. Again, the sense of camaraderie, community, mutual respect, mutual support, and might I add, joy. I think that's not to be ignored. So, Sylvie Baudet, raise your hand. That's Sylvie Baudet. You have heard some of our panelists speak about David Headlam. David is on our theory faculty and happens to be the husband of Sylvie Baudet. And I will credit Dave with this next title. I said to Sylvie, are you sure? Coloratura to collaborator. I might point out that neither of these people is a coloratura. However, what is interesting about both Corey Barrett and Jennifer Tung is that they began life as singers. Jennifer was here studying with Machi Toribara in the voice department. She got a bachelor's degree in voice, and then she did a 180 and came across the hall, literally. Machi's office is where Steve Laces is now. And so she came across the hall and joined the accompanying side of the biz. And so that's Jennifer's story. Corey's story, he got both his bachelor's and his master's degree in voice. And bless him, he took the plunge. Not an easy one, and I was going to say that very thing. But he is now, obviously, both of them are managing to connect their two worlds in really wonderful ways. So we'll start with Jennifer, please.
I mean, what can I say aside from the fact that I've spent a lot of time here in Rochester, and it's been really wonderful. And when I first got out of here with an accompanying degree, I'll back up a little bit. When I was doing my voice degree here on my 4th year, I was actually get to work with a number of really great coaches. Craig Rudenberg was now in New York, and Armin Guzelian, as well as Roger Vignoles. And it was Craig actually who had first suggested that, well, if you play piano and you sing, have you ever thought about, doing vocal coaching? I was like, what's that? I haven't really thought about that. And he said, well, I think that, you should really think about it. So then, naturally, I mean, this school having one of the best collaborative piano programs in the country, I was really looking into it, and I realized that it doesn't have a vocal specialty. Now, being a vocalist and have played with a lot of my friends, like over the years, and I really love doing that, the thought of having to collaborative piano doing with a violinist or a flute player, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And so I remember walking into Dr. Barr's office and talking to her, I was like, is it possible if I can not do and she said, no, trust me, this will be really good for you. And so what ended up happening was I had a choice between auditioning here, or I actually did get into the early Music Institute for Voice at Indiana University. And I had decided that I was going to take the plunge and do something completely different, but that also meant that I had to take a year off because I hadn't really had any experience with much instrumental repertoire. And I can tell you now, looking back and taking the plunge and doing a program that's actually equally balanced between voice accompanying and instrumental accompanying was such a great thing for me. It made me a much better pianist. And it really taught me how to use time efficiently, and it's just really great. And so then after I finished here, I moved to Toronto, with whom I didn't know anyone there. And so rather than sending emails, and I figured, well, I just wanted to take the more personal approach. So I literally went to University of Toronto and sat outside doors of voice teachers. In between lessons, when they come out, I would introduce myself, and I said, I would love to offer free service, for you for a day, to play for your students. And that's actually how I got my first connections, and it was amazing, you know, all the keyboard skills and sight reading that you learn here, it's worth it. I mean, like, I remember a day, I happened to work with one of the teachers, her name was Mary Morrison, who was a very famous, you know, singer, and she taught a lot of contemporary repertoire. And so I remember playing an entire day of just Canadian contemporary repertoire, Strauss and Wolf. It was like an entire day of, and that was like, I thought back and I was like, oh, thank God, you know, that I came here and got all those skills that I needed to do. And so in the meantime, what's really interesting was that when I thought that I wasn't going to develop my vocal career, the fact that I met so many people and so many singers, you know, like through playing for them, and also playing for auditions, you know, with orchestral conductors, actually got me connected again, you know, in the vocal world. And so what I now do is that I'm currently the head of the voice department at the Glenn Booth School at the Royal Conservatory of Music. I also teach collaborative piano, you know, at the school, as well as conduct choir. And I now pretty much I don't really sing opera anymore because I do a lot of teaching and there really isn't enough time for me to be away. And so mostly what I do is I do a lot of recitals and oratorio work. And because I'm both a pianist and a vocalist, what I've been doing with my recital programs is that I actually always, it's my signature now, that I always do something piano, whether it's mostly actually what I've been doing is piano forehands with my collaborator who plays for me when I sing. And that has actually gotten a really good response and people really liked it. And they're like, wow, that's just something really, really different. And I'll end with one story that, you know, that kind of put the two worlds together. I was auditioning for the Britton Pierce summer program. And it was with Roger Vinales that year, and it was Wolf and Strauss Lieder for 10 days. So I showed up to my appointed time and I had a baritone that was ready, you know, to sing for me, and I was doing one Wolf and one Strauss for the audition. And I got a text 15 minutes before the audition. The baritone said, "I'm really sick. I don't think that I'm going to be able to sing." And I'm like, okay. I didn't really know what to do, and so they came on and they're like, "Oh, so you don't have a singer?" And I was like, "Well, my singer just told me that they weren't available." I said, "But," I'm like, "I could do both at the same time." And so the panels were like, okay, I think they weren't really sure. I think they're like, wow, we don't know what we're getting into. And so I started out with Morgan by Strauss. And after I finished, there was silence for a long time. And 2 days later, I heard from another person who's very close friends with the panelist, and she said, "I heard from someone that you did a really unique audition." And well, it did so happen that they really liked me, so I got a full scholarship and that's over. So, you know, so really a lot of people have asked me which you would choose to do, and I don't think that I've actually really chose, that I've managed to continue, lucky enough to actually be in both streams, and now I have a number of students who are here doing the undergrad in voice, so.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Glory.
Well, as you said, I have an undergrad and a master's in voice, and I just decided that wasn't for me to continue as a singer. And I'd always accompanied for singers for quite a long time. I did a lot of bad habits. So I studied here, and it was a huge challenge. I won't lie. Switching gears kind of that late. But I'm so glad I came here because it just gave me everything I needed. And following my graduation here, I worked at the Minnesota Opera and the Des Moines Metro Opera for several years. And that was a huge education. I mean, just kind of being immersed in opera all day long and in every aspect of production and conducting and playing and playing and playing and playing and coaching and coaching and coaching. And watching other people coach and conduct and sing, and it was just a huge education. So I did that for several years, and then I accepted a position at the University of Oklahoma as the vocal coach. And then my current job opened up at the University of Northern Iowa, and I was just always such a fan of the singing there that I pounced on it, and I've been there for 8 years now. I'm an associate professor and I'm chair of the voice area. And since that time, when you're in opera, you meet an unending stream of potential colleagues and friends and partners, and it's really this whole playing well with others thing is kind of how I decided to take this job or that job. Because when I was working, you're always seeking out people you want to play with and who shares your interests and your values, and you just start to amass a group of people around yourself that you enjoy working with and you want to work with. And you kind of weed out those others that you don't. And so I had a colleague at Minnesota Opera and Des Moines Metro Opera who is a stage director. And we just hit it off. We had a lot of the same interests, and we decided after working in other companies for a while together to start our own, because we wanted to do what we wanted to do. And we said, why not? So let's try it. And we did, and we're going to be in our 4th year in San Diego, and it's been a thrill to kind of be the impresario that way and amass more of your colleagues and friends who share your passions and your interests as a staff, and do what you want to do the pieces you've always wanted to do, and work with the people you've always wanted to work with, all at the same time. So I'm really enjoying that, and I think that's probably a realization I just really recently made, is that's when you're really happy, is when you're taking all these skills, but then you're working with people that also value those same things, and it's just wonderful, because there are all those people looking to do the same thing, and when you meet up, and you're all just relieved and excited.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, questions? Christopher.
Corey, specifically, I would be curious, how has it been, the process of starting an opera company? And is this with Kristen? Kristen Roach?
No.
Okay, she was also in San Diego.
Oh,
I'm just curious. But yeah, I'm curious, how's the process been so far?
Oh, a big challenge, especially in San Diego. Well, I think the challenge was certainly not finding people interested in playing and singing and teaching and coaching and directing. It was an easy job that way. It was saying no to some people. But the biggest challenge was finding, of course, the financial support and the donors and all of that, and amassing a board. But I have to say, it's just been going so much better than I ever expected. And if I would have let the fear of all that, and because I had no interest in doing anything administrative or clerical, and now I'm doing so much of that now. But if I would have let that stop me, it would have never happened. And I just didn't realize it would be as easy as it's been. So we're the black this year. So that's been the biggest challenge. But everyone wants to work and make it happen, so it's been a shared responsibility.
May I ask a question of you? Is Dorothy Hatch still around? She taught at El Centro. She's a master's degree in voice from here.
I've never met her, but somehow that name is familiar to me.
55. So she graduated with her master's, and I just wondered if she was still, she had such a gorgeous voice, and it's one that I love accompanying when she was here.
I'll have to look for her.
Yeah, it's easy enough to do in San Diego.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
So how did you deal with the challenge when you first decided to study in this studio? I mean, obviously there is a...
I think I'll leave now.
I mean, that kind of challenge. I mean, obviously there is a really big gap between being a pianist and being a singer. So, I mean, technically.
Well, we both speak to that, I'm sure. It was really hard. I hadn't taken piano lessons in about 6 years before I came here, and she took a big chance. It just took a lot of grunt work and a lot of, and I couldn't absorb it until I left, really. I couldn't, there was so much information, but it was amazing to me how the education kept going after I left. It was as if she was still with me. But really, when you're out from under the microscope, I mean, you certainly feel that way when you're here in school. It just gets, your progress just accelerates beyond anything I expected when the pressure was off. And so it was really hard when I was here, but it really took off after I left. Yeah, so the foundation was in your bones, and then you can kind of really make it all work, even more than you thought you could after.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I remember at first when I started working, whenever I get into problems, like let's say learning music or collaborating, with singers, what I've learned from here has informed me, and I've continued to learn. It's like I've heard her voice every time. When I'm playing a passage and I'm like, why is it I can't make these notes? And all I would remember is like, stop looking. You just need to trust what you're doing. And I mean, really, you don't ever stop learning. And for me, and I'm sure that it feels the same, is that, coming from not necessarily a pianist, like most of the people that I meet even now, like that are doing a lot of collaboration, are pianists and the outcome. So for a really long time, I felt that I was not good enough, to be a collaborator. And then, as years go by and you learn, new skills, and you realize that it's not really, like about, how technically amazing, you are, but it's, what other skills you can use that makes you unique and different. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially in marketing yourself, that you find when you come out of college, is that to really find a niche of what you love and what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And when you can sell that, people will believe you and you get hired.
It's a challenge, because if you say you do this and that and that and that, then they say, oh, you're not a specialist in that.
Right. Yeah, and I read into a lot of that in the beginning of
my career. Oh, you usually collaborate with strings. Why do you want to do the singers? It's happened. I've gotten over that, but it has happened.
But it just takes time. Like, don't give up. Like the people who make it and get to do what they want to do is by perseverance, and obviously the knowledge. And I can't, aside from musically what I've learned, all the theory, so that I cannot thank you, all the professors, enough for what I've learned here that has helped me hugely in my teaching. What actually is very interesting is that as a collaborative pianist, I've sat in a lot of voice lessons. And you would think that maybe is not very important, but it made me a very different and much better voice teacher than I could ever imagine. Yeah. So,
other questions?
I have a question for Jennifer. I'm curious, you just moved to Toronto, somewhere you're not familiar with. When you move somewhere and you just don't know what the scene is like as far as music, how do you know what to charge, or how do you set your rates? Or you don't want to. I know you want to go to an area and people laugh at you that you think you charge that much, or get ripped off for not charging that. Things like that. How do you find out what the musical scene is like?
well, basically, right away, like when you get there, you try and find, other people who do similar things, as you do. You try to find the community, of people. Now it's so much easier, like through Facebook or the internet resources. But literally, and you run into, when I was there and I started working at University of Toronto, I run into a lot of other, pianists, and I would ask them, what rate do you charge? And then you kind of figure out. It just takes time, not right away that you'll be able to figure it out. But the more people that you talk to, the more likely that you'll find out what's actually reasonable, to charge in the city. So
I should probably explain why I refuse to say what the rates are in Rochester. About 15 years ago, somebody asked me who was the cheapest pianist.
Oh.
That is a question I would absolutely never, ever agree to answer. And from that day, so I have made it a point of honor that I will not ask what people are charging. You charge for the market. You charge for In New York City, you can command a lot more money than you can in some other places. Find out, just as Jennifer said, what the market will bear. And in the end, it's what you are able to do and the consistency with which you're able to do it that will be your own best advertisement for almost anything, including the, well, aren't you a local accompanist, then how can you possibly do? Well, show them.
Yeah, that's what you do. And,
The first success will lead to others, and we've spent generations trying to eliminate the perceived negatives of the term accompanist. I find that collaborative pianist is a whole lot more unwieldy to spit out. And many of our colleagues, Dr. Miller, I think you'd agree, would suggest that probably we aren't so offended by the term accompanist as long as the understanding of what it is that we do, we aren't so bothered by what we're called, maybe. So I think, yeah, enough. Any other questions? I'm sorry, I'm one.
Just curious, but this question is for you. How did you
I'm one as a current student.
Yeah. How did you decide to, accept this to vocal?
How did I what?
How did you decide to accept this to vocalists in your studio? Because I assume there's probably some technically better pianists in that audition. So I'm just curious.
Good question, because I think not all of my colleagues would agree with the choice that I've made. I happen to have had the great good fortune to be at the front end of this development of accompanying as a discipline in this United States. And as such, I realized that one could choose to only select the best, however one determined that. And that would be fine, and that's certainly valid. But it seemed to me that if we are going to change perceptions about what is accompanying, that you have to have an equal and corresponding, taking people who express a desire, who are curious, genuinely curious about the profession. We need to bring them along too, not just take the cream off the top of the milk bottle. And maybe we might miss something if we don't encourage all the other people who think they might, maybe, if the stars align right, make a career in accompanying, but they're not sure what that means. And they've been mentored by someone somewhere, and that someone is often not the piano teacher, but a voice teacher or an instrumental teacher. And so I made a personal commitment to myself that I would always accept people that I thought, in my humble estimation, exhibited some sort of special human and imaginative and intellectual curiosity, and hope that, which is why at my house last night we were talking about all of my audition assistants and how over the decades they have passed on the technique of building in extra time in the audition process. There's the Gene Bar schedule, and then there's the one that all the rest of you apparently know. But because I notoriously get off on the schedule, this is why. I'm trying to see what spark is there. And I have the great good fortune of conducting the auditions in my office. So it's a very intimate space. But it gives me an opportunity, rather than being in one of the concert halls, I can ask questions. I also have an advantage in that I'm a program of one, so I don't have a group of colleagues, all of whom might have differing opinions. So I'm attempting on one to make my best guess about the potential in all of you. And that is, so when you're asking yourselves, current students, why did you take me? That's why. Because I sense that you have something special and that you should be given an opportunity to follow that dream. And let's see what we can do together. And maybe we'll decide that that particular thing that you registered for isn't maybe you, but together we'll find where is the you in music. And we've been hearing this morning about the diversity that each of our panelists do represent. And I think finding who you are and where you can shine, I told a recent student that It's not about survive, it's about thrive, it's about shine. Where can you make your mark on this musical world that you so dearly love? Where can all of your skills and personality traits and imagination and intellect come together in the best possible way? And it's a journey for us together, students and me, to see if what we can figure it out. And sometimes you'll figure that out after you leave me. So Anwan, did that help?
Yeah, sure.
I was trying to be good and not talk, but since she asked. Any other questions of these two? Thank you very much. So our next group of panelists, Elizabeth Avery, Kristen Ditlow, and Paul Transu. I would like everyone in the audience to understand that actually everybody represents all sorts of crossover here. I just happened to arbitrarily put you into categories because it was a way of addressing the many variations of a life in the world as a collaborative musician. That said, from left to right, we have Paul Transu, who is at the University of Southern Illinois at Carbondale. Next to him is Elizabeth Avery, who is at the University of Oklahoma in Norman. Next to her is Kristen Ditlow, who is at the University of New Mexico. She's just got her first job, and she's just in her first month, 6 weeks. So ladies go first. We'll start with Kristen.
Okay. So I was joking with someone last night that my path from Eastman to my current job involved driving part of Route 66 with my husband and finding a place to live and starting this new job. But there were 3 specific experiences at Eastman that really prepared me for what I'm doing now. One was the opportunity to have conducted a main stage show with Eastman Opera Theater. I was the full-time GA for the entire coursework time of the degree. So my task of conducting Fledermaus this coming winter and conducting a world premiere written by my department chair in the fall that's on my plate currently. And also all of the languages that I was able to work on and the techniques of coaching. So not only, of course, centered around my lessons with Dr. Barr, but also working with Dr. Russell Miller and working on conducting specifically with Neil Verone and Brad Lupman. Working on all of those skills are helping my individual coachings that I'm doing on my current job. And the third thing was the networking over the summer, which I think is really important for students to think about, because you never know where your next job is going to come from. So I didn't really rest my entire time with the doctorate because over the semester breaks and over the summer I was able to travel and work. So all of those opportunities for you to return to your home countries or work on staff at a summer festival, those were important to my Eastman degree because I felt like it was a continuing lesson the whole time.
Thank you. Liz.
I also would like to say something about when I was here. Jean Barr initially asked me, what is your career goal? And although I had been hanging out with singers for quite some time and gravitating toward opera and vocal coaching, I was still reluctant to say that that's what I absolutely wanted. I was reluctant to sort of let chamber music fade a little bit into the distance. And Jean is very wise and very intuitive. She knew what she was doing. And she didn't push me to make that commitment, but I do feel that she knew all along what was going to happen. And I did end up in working with singers, which I absolutely love. But I do appreciate so much that she encouraged me to continue to grow and stretch in chamber music, because now in my position I do seek out my instrumental colleagues for vocal chamber music or even just plain chamber music. It's not only good for me musically, but politically as well. So that's something to keep in mind. In my position now, it's 1/2 opera at the University of Oklahoma. I'm coaching opera half of my time. The other half of the time, I'm doing teaching diction and coaching in the studio and advising students. And I feel Eastman prepared me so well for all of that. Working with Jean, working with Russell Miller, working with Benton Hess, working as an opera GA, I feel so well prepared. And I have to echo again the importance of the theory and music history preparation, because having a doctorate in the voice and opera areas at my my school, there's a small minority who have doctorates. So within the graduate college, that gives me a certain designation for graduate committees. So I can actually serve as the performance area representative or the theory representative or the history representative on those committees, which seemed odd at first, and then I realized, no, Eastman really did put me in a position for this.
I have at times, I think, I'm not sure if I was in the wrong place at the right time or the right place at the right time. The short story was I came here to study with Jean, and then she took a sabbatical at the start of my second year, which I was very disappointed in. And I requested that I be allowed to not take applied lessons that semester so I could save my 4 semesters basically of lessons with her. And I was very discouraged from doing that. So her replacement, Ann Epperson, came in, and then Ann hired me to Cleveland Institute of Music 3 years later. So what I thought was obviously not an ideal situation became a very productive situation for me. One time I played an audition for Houston Grand Opera, and someone else who was listening hired me to play for their opera company. So things go different ways, and I think the path finds you sometimes much more than you find your path. When I left here without having done the lecture recital in the comps, and Ann Epperson got me the job at Cleveland Institute of Music, where I was the coach accompanist for the opera program. And one of the things I had to do was we had 3 sections of opera workshop, and I would have to improvise music for them to move and sing to. In other words, I would have to create something, either the energy of characters or the space that they're in, and have them move and try and explore improvisation of that, which at first was a very daunting task, and then a lot of things that even Marie Rolfe had taught me in keyboard skills, things I never thought I would use, or even things I learned from Ralph Locke in a class, as well as everything I learned with Jean, came through, and I became, again, what people have said, I became good at that. And it's funny what you learn. I learned that this girl, Sarah Strother, anytime I played anything in A-flat major, she would break out into tears within 3 minutes and have to leave the room. Didn't matter what was fast or slow. We talk about the connection of what our connection with music is. And for some, it's so deep-seated, it's hard to talk about. But I did that. I was there for 7 years. And then I got the itch to sort of go out and work a little more in the real opera world, and I'd done some shows with Cleveland Opera. I got some shows with Seattle Opera through a friend, also a graduate of this program. So the connections you make really help you. I had never planned on doing opera. I had a friend hire me after my master's degree to work at the Ohio Light Opera, and I sort of cut my teeth on operetta there, and people told me I was good at what I did, and what I was good at was following a conductor and sounding like an orchestra. And I think at times the bar for playing opera has been low in the past. Just play enough notes not to screw us up. And that's probably passable for most people, but if you go in there and you know the score and you sound like strings or brass, or the difference even between an oboe and a flute solo in a hand, you know the score well enough to play what's not on the piano vocal page, but what they hear from the pit. If you do that, not only do the conductors look at you and rehire you, but the stage directors come alive. And again, not to toot Jean's horn for what she taught me about how to make sounds and imagine it. At Opera in the Avalon 2 years ago, we were doing Marriage of Figaro, and I was playing the sing-through, and was on a room a little bigger than this with an upright that had 3 keys that didn't work, including an E flat right above middle C, which is, you know that piece, there's a lot of E flat. But I was playing, it's a show I'd done several times, and I really knew it was just having fun playing. And the director, the stage director, came up to me at the break and just, God, Paul, it's great. It sounds like an effing orchestra. And I'm thinking, it's just an upright, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. There's something about what I was taught and what I've harnessed that reads like that. So if you're interested in opera, it's, you know, it's not just getting by, but if you can sound like an orchestra and do those things, and what conducting I've done, I never really studied conducting other than, Thomas Edison said, to invent the light bulb, I had to fail 1,500 times before I invented it correctly. I've seen good conducting and bad conducting. I've had a conductor who hated me at Seattle because he didn't think I could follow him. And we got with the orchestra, and the same places that I could not follow him. The orchestra, it was the exact same places. So I felt a little better after that. The company had to spend $110,000 on overtime with the orchestra to fix the problem. But it's funny how those things work. So if you're interested in that, and personally, my life at times is a big emotional roller coaster. I have big highs, I have big lows. And so a lot of opera speaks to me on a personal level. I can look at Puccini's score and feel like I know exactly why he wrote every note on the page. And some days that's a good thing, and some days that's a bad thing. But having that passion and the desire, truly collaborating, when you think of an opera production, I mean, you talk about the entire departments. Not only is it the School of Music, but it's the Department of Theater, could be the dance department. The numbers are, even as plays as small as Southern Illinois University, we do an opera and there's 120 people involved. So it's really almost the ultimate collaborative thing to do. And obviously you're dealing with people, it's always been a battle between what's more important, the music or the words. Who has the better say, the conductor or the stage director? There have been rehearsals where I wanted to climb under the piano to avoid that battle. But now as the vocal coach and the opera coach where I am, it's allowed me to sort of see both sides of the coin and to spend as much time actually in coaching talking about the drama on the page and how to have it come out than just what's stylistically and musically or linguistically correct. So there's never an opportunity to pass up to learn something that you didn't think you knew. My wife's a singer, and I've probably been in 5 times as many voice lessons as she had in her career by playing for 6 singers a week when she was taking 1 lesson a week. As I think it was Jennifer was saying, you just learn so much in there about how to teach. And finally, well, it's not opera, Jean really taught me to be comfortable constantly reinventing the wheel. That's not a sign of failure, it's a sign of great intelligence. To see what works and take it and go on and refine. I have an accompanying timesheet for my GAs that probably looks a whole lot like what she designed and what was Elaine Relier's nightmare for counting up. But no one told me I should do that, but I wanted to be protected in case someone said, are your people doing the work and earning that? So that's a university standpoint, but my opera background, then I'm in a position where I'm the opera coach, the vocal coach, and the collaborative piano teacher. And so I've gotten to do sort of all 3 things that I love. And a quick anecdote, I used to think that the key to life, the goal, was to work the least amount of hours for the most amount of money. And I was wrong. The key is to find something that you love and happen to get paid for it. That's really what it is. And I think all of us in this room are doing something we love, not even what we maybe planned to do when we were here. But we've found our niche, and it will come to you. We have 26 faculty full-time where I am, and 3 of us are from Eastman. One of them was the chair of the committee that hired me. Eastman people will hire Eastman people.
Yes.
You run across it, and the collegial nature of everyone in this room here is stronger than any place I've ever seen or heard of. So for those of you who are in the program, relax. You're going to find work. Work will find you, and you're going to be quite successful at it. I talked for too long. Sorry.
Yeah, and so I need to, one question? Hannah?
So what kind of things or skills do you recommend us to develop to be able to coach the vocalists in different languages that you don't necessarily speak?
Kristen?
Languages. Work on them. Take diction. Work on your grammar in every language. Start with the one you speak natively and branch out from there. I had the opportunity to assist a gentleman in Italy who speaks 9 languages fluently and works at the Met in Juilliard. And I asked him, how have you learned all these languages? And he said, grammar, that's it. So he learned a structure and then continued to put things into that larger structure. And also, the work's never done with languages.
You learn one, then you learn the next.
Right.
tiring. Also, never wait for a college course to take a language. Now there are so many wonderful resources online, like Duolingo and Busuu, and there are just endless live MOCA. There are so many that you can just spend 10 or 15 minutes a day while you're eating breakfast to just, okay, I got my language done today. And for me, whatever project I'm working on, I have a big thing in France in January, so now French is my thing for this whole semester. That's my morning breakfast activity, is just work on my French. If the next thing that comes up happens to be in German, then that's my time to rotate back to working in German again. You just have to keep it going all the time.
And forgive me, I'm going to cut this off because we have to get to the last group. I think we have to be out of here at 11:30. So would you join me in thanking you? As our next group moves to the table, I realize that many of you dear Accompanying alums, I would like to have a little FaceTime with me, and I've been trying to figure out how to do this. One possibility will be that those of you who are supposed to be at the banquet tonight, maybe we could commandeer however many tables we require, or however many of you will be there, and so we can just exclude everybody. And the other thing is, when we leave here, I will go to my office, and I'll hang out for the 2 hours before the 1:30 recital, and you all can stop by. Okay? So I don't know how to calm myself.
What are you taking your coffee?
Latte, please. So I'm very delighted. We've got the final category called entrepreneurs. But of course, the interesting thing is that everybody who has been speaking this morning is one. Eastman is known for its entrepreneurial focus through the Arts Leadership Program. I think we predated it. Say I with pardonable pride. But I think it is almost part of being a collaborative pianist, that one is entrepreneurial because of one's social skills, musical gifts, which are multifaceted, and your interest in people. So, these 4 people have interesting stories to tell. We'll do the ladies first, and we'll wind up with Chris. So, Cindy.
All right, the shortest one first. After I graduated from this program, I got a job in California where I stayed for 4 years. So the first meeting I had with my chair, he asked me to start a program in Accompanying for bachelor's degree students. Now, mind you, that was my first job, and that was his first job as a chair. He had just came out as a conductor of the Army band. So he wanted to be in academia, so it was his first leap. So we were basically a blind leading the blind in this venture. But I did it, and I stayed until my first students graduated because I was in a very long distance relationship. My husband is here and I was in California. So we had this trip back and forth for 4 years. So it got kind of old, but Syracuse had a 1-year position in 1998, and so I took that. And it was interesting because during my degree, Dr. Barr had suggested that I took keyboard skills class. And I was very stubborn. I said, I won't do it, and I just put it under the rug. Well, guess what? I was asked to teach at Syracuse. So cram, and anyway, so do everything she said. So anyway, after this, I had the wonderful opportunity to start teaching at Eastman in 2000. And every year my contract is different. It changes constantly. But after a couple of years, and that's why I asked for this, because I needed a visual. Often accompanists have this kind of, well, first, tenure track position, you have a very narrow field, and you climb up the echelon until you're an expert in that field. Well, often collaborative pianists are very obese. It doesn't climb up very far, but we do a lot of things, right? So, but it's very hard sometimes, if you're not in academia, to climb up the echelon. So I was that obese person, and I needed to find something that would help me climb up. So that's when I decided to do a master's degree in arts administration, because I had started this festival called the Women in Music Festival in 2005, and the mission, of course, interested me. Promoting women composers and promoting women conductors and women in fields in music that did not discourage but didn't encourage per se women. So I started that. So the mission interested me very much, but what I liked also was the fact that I collaborated with a lot of people, institutions, churches, temples, organizations, ensembles of all kinds, to make a full week of festivals. So the organization, promotion, marketing, and all that stuff, that really interested me. So I decided to start a master's degree in arts administration, and I had to ask for help funding, a faculty development grant from the Eastman School of Music. So the administration looked at this and said, oh, she's interested in that. So before I started my master's degree, I was offered a job as director of summer session because somebody was retiring. And I managed to get my internship from my master's degree to act as my, basically my 1 year learning of the job before I took over. So I finished my internship in August, and I took over as the director in September. So that was a very quick turnaround. So all those skills I've learned, in accompanying, basically organizational skills, social skills, how to promote yourself, how to be flexible. We talked a lot about flexibility today. How to be flexible and look at the situation and say, what can I do to change that if I'm not happy with the situation, and do it. That's where I'm going to stop because time is running out.
Well, and however much I cannot keep on time during audition season, I have been watching the door and I don't see people gathering. So I'm going to make an executive decision that we will stay and hear all of these panels. We will do this as we plan. We will run over. If you need to leave, please don't feel embarrassed to do so. But I'm going to stay because I'm so fascinated to hear what the rest have to say. So if that's all right with you, that's what we'll do. Anne.
My name's Anne Breeden, and I am a really good example of how you should expect the unexpected to happen in your life. I did my undergrad in Chicago, came here for my master's, and moved right back to Chicago, and was prepared to take it by storm and be a company for everyone and their mother, and I did. I did that for 5 years, and then I had a shoulder injury. I had gotten this shoulder injury from a massage I got here at Eastman, and I was just playing on this injury for 5 years. I didn't really know I had it. I knew there was pain, and it just got worse and worse and worse. So finally I quit, kind of at the top of where I was playing for Chicago Symphony people and all of that stuff, and I quit, and I started teaching little kids, and I loved it, and I also started a nonprofit, because I have always looked at audiences that are disenfranchised, and I would love to play for these retirement homes, low-income buildings. I love these audiences, and I said, why can't I figure out a way to make money doing that? And I did. I figured that out. I created a nonprofit. I learned a lot. I was lucky enough to meet some wealthy individuals in Chicago. You never know who you're going to meet. Be friends with everyone. Be polite to everyone as much as you can, because these people really helped me get started. And then I met my husband, and we moved to Kansas. What am I going to do in Kansas? Farm. And so there was a year of Great Depression, and our time now between Denver and the farm in Kansas. It's only a 4.5-hour drive, and slowly I'm meeting, there's just no classical culture out there. And I'm doing my gigging thing now in Denver, my shoulder's all better, and I'm meeting a lot of people who are very interested, farmers, wealthy farmers, who are interested in bringing culture to their beautiful, they love the place that they grew up and lived in. And so I'm thinking about starting for-profit or nonprofit, I'm not for sure yet, bringing house concerts into rural communities. There's a real great need. I'm really excited about the potential, so that's where I am right now.
Thank you. Hey.
I'm Faith DeBow, and I left here in 2001 with my master's, not really sure exactly what I wanted to do. I had started out working with singers, got here, had very little instrumental experience, similar to Corey and some other people. And my dad was in the Army for 30 years growing up, so I didn't really have a hometown. So I decided, well, I'm going to just move to somewhere that seemed to have a lot going on. And so Jean connected me with Kristen Roach, some of you know, also Carolyn True, who's Nolita's niece. Carolyn's in they're both in San Antonio. Kristen's, of course, wonderful pianist. Carolyn also is head of the piano department at Trinity University, a small private school. So I had several phone conversations with them my last spring. What's going on in Central Texas, the Austin, San Antonio corridor? Is there enough work? And they sort of said, what are you interested in? And Kristen especially said, oh yeah, you'll go have lots of work right away. I would be thrilled to have more Eastman people over here. So I moved a month after graduation to San Marcos, Texas, which is right in between Austin and San Antonio. I'm about 30 miles north to Austin before you San Antonio. I had some also longtime personal friends that lived in San Marcos and said, you can live with us the first 2 months while you're getting started until you're making enough money to find your own place. So I did that for 4 months. So 5 minutes from where those friends lived is Texas State University, a big state school of 37,000 students. So about a month later, I just walked in July, took my resume, walked into the school music office, introduced myself to the secretary. Always be nice to secretaries.
Oh,
So I just said, I just moved to town. I'm a pianist. I just got a master's in from Eastman, and here's what I'm interested in. I don't know what your company setup is here. And they were thrilled. They actually, at the time, didn't have any staff companies. They have a little kind of setup now. It was just sort of a free-for-all, people trying to find freelancers. So she walked me around the building for the few people that happened to be in their offices in July. And I met the head of the voice department and a few other people. So I started out playing for about 15 singers, just completely freelance. So I was in the building a lot. And then 3 weeks into that first semester, they had a grad student leave. Our class piano program, they have one section that's taught by a grad assistant as a scholarship. So that grad student completely withdrew from school 3 weeks into classes. And so they were stuck without someone to teach this class. And everyone was on an overload that semester, and they said, oh wait, you have a master's, can you teach class piano? And you step in and teach this class. I said, okay, I'm sure. You know, I was honest, I said I haven't taught class piano, but I've taught privately. You know, I'm happy to do that if you're willing to have me do that. So I stepped in and had to catch up. This guy really hadn't taught them anything in the first 3 weeks. And I was observed, I think, twice that semester. I guess they thought it went okay, because I've been doing that since. And then a year later, they also added the accompanying class. So I've been doing that the last 13 years or so. Of course, still do a lot of playing with faculty and students. Then the director of choral activities, who's a pianist, got more and more into being director of choral activities, also into administration. He had been the pianist at the time for Conspirare, the choir that you mentioned last night. And so as he was getting busier and realized that more conducting administration is his thing, not so much piano playing, it sort of gradually became that I became a pianist for Conspirare. And so I think I played my first concert in 2004, and then ever since 2005, I've basically done everything with them. And then in 2011, that same person was also part of the leadership of the Victoria Bach Festival. Craig Howell Johnson, the Conspirare conductor, is also the artistic director for the Victoria Bach Festival, a summer festival in Victoria, Texas. So then eventually this guy decided to drop out of the leadership of that, again, because of his growing duties at Texas State. So a few years ago, I became a young artist program coordinator. We have a couple outstanding young artists every year. We do outreach concerts all over town, so really diverse audiences. I also play a lot of chamber music there, and I'm part of the team of 4 that plan that whole festival. So it's super fun to be part of it, playing with that. Yeah, and I think you learn things from trying things and deciding what's not for you. I spent 3 years early on playing for Lyric Opera San Antonio, which is now a completely different company. I did fairly well at it, but I just said it wasn't really my thing. But I really learned to play orchestrally, how to follow a conductor, and I use those skills all the time in working in choral music, because there's we do big oratorios and things too. Yeah, and Conspirare, I do anything and everything. I work with solo singers, we do things with orchestra, we do pop music, we lead community sings, it's multifaceted. Yeah, I think I was kind of ready for anything, and yeah, definitely flexibility is
Thank you. Chris?
Well, rather than tell my entire story, I'll just start off by saying that a lot of people think that the classical music field is a zero-sum game. There's only so many universities, so many opera companies. If you fit in, you get a job. You know, there's a place for you, if not tough. I refuse to accept that. And I think one of the most important things that people can realize is that if you can create an initiative from the ground up, that's a great way to start either a career within the initiative or to create a career for you either in traditional institutions or doing something totally different. So rather than tell you my entire story, I ended up, after I finished, I got a job, two jobs in Vancouver at the Vancouver Academy in DBC. I was there for 8 years, and then I quit because I got bored. And I came to Toronto and just wanted to see if I could, make it in a much larger space. And after a few years of playing for, like I say, an opera company like Tapestry, New Opera, and I had these 2 weeks in November 2005 where I had no work, nothing going on. I thought, uh-oh. And so at the same time, I wanted to start a blog for the longest time, but I never had time. But it was finally a time where I had a couple of weeks. So I created a blog from the ground up, and I thought, should I just talk about myself? Why don't I call this the Collaborative Piano Blog and not just talk about my own stuff, but create an online space for the entire profession? Because one of the things that people had complained about with collaborative piano / accompanying is that there was no real online presence. People didn't even think it was a profession. So here was a brand new space that was completely open. So I learned how to write articles, learned how to manage a blogging platform, eventually learned how to advertise for things. And from there, that was in many ways the transformative moment in my career, because that's how I ended up from being like somebody that did a lot of gigging in cities and taught classes, and got from there to being somebody that everyone knew. And it was certainly an awesome responsibility to be able to just try to manage where the profession was. But at the same time, it was fascinating because this was something that, it's such an open field, is that there's so many initiatives like this that it's still wide open. There's so much stuff that remains to be done. And the fascinating thing is that many of the established people here might not be capable of discovering what those things are, but those of you who are students now have the vision and the smarts to 10 to 20 years from now of discovering where that growth needs to be and have the skills to do that kind of stuff. The other thing that I wanted to really talk about was that one day in our studio class, Jean, in a quiet moment, she said, I just wanted to tell you guys that if there ever comes a moment in your career when you decide that your career trajectory takes you to a place that's not in collaborative piano, that you have to honor that. That is totally okay. And I came to that place where all of a sudden I realized that with the work I was getting, I was more in the field of piano pedagogy than collaborative piano. Because one of the things that the blog opened up for me was traditional teaching gigs, which is something that I had not expected a couple of years ago. Because right after I started the blog, within a couple of weeks, the head of the piano department at the conservatory came up to me and said, why are you not on the piano faculty? I said, well, I'd like to be. So I worked in the dean's office, and sure enough, I was the newly minted member of the piano faculty. And after that, I was asked to be an examiner. And since then, I've been asked to be a part of the 2015 revision for the Royal Conservatory's piano syllabus, both on the technique and the repertoire ends. And I have an interesting side story about that in a second. And a recent gig I also got was compiling the sight reading examples for the grade 9 and 10 4-star sight reading books. And yeah, so that's good. That's going to be a lot of fun. yeah, so if I could just use the whiteboard for a second. This is something that all of you might wish to consider. Thank you. And one of the reasons why collaborative piano might be one of the most visionary places to be in the musical field is that.
Excuse me, can you use the black? We can't
Oh,
see
sure.
that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
It's
sharpness.
not just me.
Most of you that teach at universities know that these are very in high demand, so protect them with your life. So I think all of us started off as collaborative pianists. And I think the big thing about entrepreneurship is that you're eventually going to start a project. And one of the cool things is that this project, if it's managed properly, can be a major part of your profession, and hopefully you're smart enough to do something that can actually generate income. Besides something. But what this can create for you is not necessarily success within the project, but it can branch you out into other directions, like this. So you might not end up being in this place where you started. And I'd like to call attention to what I think is the most incredible example, which is Helen Halsandi, who initially started, if I could use too bold as to talk about the stuff you've been up to, but she started off as a collaborative pianist and a creator of beautiful websites. But at the same time, you got interested in WordPress. And now Helen is one of the major people behind the latest edition of WordPress as one of the core developers. And that is just fantastic how this, through this, can lead this way. And it's a sad moment that I don't get to play as much as I did 10 years ago. I mean, I had so many fantastic playing gigs, but I've had to seriously limit myself to only the stuff I really want to play. At the same time as I'm taking on all sorts of other things. And the blog is for me, the blog is what opened up these pathways. And I guess the really sad thing is that I don't have enough time to maintain the collaborative piano blog the way I used to. But just through the act of creating it, that was what got me into contact with a ton of people and got a lot of people interested in the work I did. And I think there's tons of room for a ton of other initiatives, many of which that the people up here up front we haven't thought of yet, but you guys will think of. And 10 to 20 years down the road, you're going to use your technological tools and with your regional smarts and your social networks to create something really fascinating.
I guess it's totally true. Actually, right now, me and a colleague of mine who met actually at Songfest out in California, talking about that there aren't any softwares out there that does piano reductions of orchestral scores. And so he knows a lot about computer programming, and so what we've been doing is that with the help of students from Hong Kong University, so we're trying to develop a software that actually you can select different criteria depending on what situations you're in, will filter out things that will help you to play orchestral reductions. And so that's a work in progress, but it's exciting. So,
it's so interesting. When a door closes, another one opens, magically. Some of you know that my last performing was in October of 2011. I've given up playing because I did not want to be remembered for playing badly. And my arthritis no longer allows me to play. It was very hard. But I'm finding such joy. Do you have any idea how much fun this weekend is? It's so incredible to hear what you all are doing. And I suppose I can dare say this in public, how proud I am of you all. So thank you for being who you are, the interesting people that you are, and for following your own dreams and letting your own interests inform your futures. And I'm proud of you, and I will never, ever, I've told some of you this, I would never, ever stand in your way. Do what floats your boat. Do what brings you pleasure. Figure out who you are and what you can bring to the world, and enjoy every moment of it. So, we'll open up the floor to questions. Kristen?
I have a question regarding taking that inspiration, those ideas, that initiative, and turning it into projects when you don't have the familiarity with profit, nonprofit, with blogging. How do you like inform yourself? How do you?
I can answer that. It's very simple. First of all, you just have to have a vision of what you want to do, and then you learn the skills. Like, I wanted to be a writer, and I was like, where can I write? And there were many barriers. There were many barriers to entry of being a writer, but then were erased by the internet. So I had to realize how to manage a blogging platform. I learned how to manage advertising. I learned how to advertise myself. I learned about PR. I learned about how to structure an article. And
how did you start? Did you just like Google? Did you meet people?
I figured it out myself, which I think is I think it was Liz Avery that said if you want to learn a language, just do it on the internet. There's there's so many resources now, and if you know one of the difficult things is, in addition to, I think it was Merlin Mann who said this, in addition to learning the things you need to learn the things you don't know, so that you can learn the things that you might be able to learn, or something. There's such a wide variety of things to learn. If you have a vision, then you can figure out, oh, if I want to start a nonprofit, I need to learn accounting. And simple things like that.
I wanted to say, if you want to start a project or a business, first ask yourself why.
Yeah.
The businesses that are really innovative start out with a question of why do you want this business? Why should it exist? And then move out from there. That's something I had to learn the hard way, I think. Yeah.
Yes, please.
This is also directed to Mr. Foley. So there are so many blogs out there. How did you, as a non-blogger, step into the position of writing a blog and making it something that is so ubiquitous?
Yeah, I stood on the shoulders of those that came before me. I figured out the blogs I really liked, like Lifehacker. I liked Merlin Mann's blog. I liked Alex Ross's blog. The rest is noise. And there was one blogger in Rochester who wrote a blog called The Well-Tempered Pianist, I think, or the Well-Tempered Blog. He's a piano technician in Rochester. And these were some of the blogs that were around, and there weren't that many. I was lucky because I started blogging at a time when there were just a few classical music blogs, and I came just ahead of a lot of them. So I already had, when all the huge rush of blogs came, that I already had a lot of readers. And I learned how to connect with people, and initially, and again, I know Dr. Baum must certainly disagree with me at some time. I could have written entirely professional articles, but one of the things I realized was that there are many of us that have very difficulties in the profession, like getting paid, and how the fact that nobody respects you. So I thought, if I can touch that hot button, that's how people can say, oh my God, that's me. And that's how I can get people's attention.
And I'm going to actually tell him that, no, I don't, I think that was great. Because it speaks to the question that Anwan asked me, how do I choose students? Choose on promise, choose on what you think the possibilities are for the future. And by what Chris did, and the way he designed his blog, he reached more people. And he helped open a door to some level of different, and I hope better, understanding of what is accompanying. And he opened a door to reams of students who all know the collaborative piano blog, even if they don't know a lot else. And so I'm very, very serious. I thank Chris, because again, this is the entrepreneurship that you're all representing. You're finding ways of making this profession better understood, and with that comes better respect. And I think, so, go for it. Other questions? Christopher?
I'm just curious,
what are the best initiatives you've seen out there that you wish you had come up with?
Prison concerts. I like that a lot.
And you said prison concert?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's an idea that's been around for a long time. When I was a student in California at Southern Cal, I can't even remember what in the heck the foundation was. Russell, do you remember? There was a foundation that supported very talented young, I happened to work with a clarinetist, and part of their charge was to go into the prison. So I remember in the early 70s going into some very interesting.
You went to jail.
I went to jail, yes. But they let me out. But it was, yeah, but it was really fascinating being a woman in the 70s going to high-profile prisons and being leered at.
Yeah.
You know, so it was quite fascinating.
Chris, I just wanted to say that I'm surprised that there are still people in the world who don't know about your blog. And last week I was talking to a friend of mine up in Ottawa, and she had never heard of it. And I told her about your blog, and she looked at it and said, "Oh my God, this is wonderful." So,
Thank you. I have one more story to tell about how these initiatives can be useful. Some of you might have read my small ebook called 31 Days to Better Practicing. Because I wanted to write, I didn't have really time to write a gigantic book, but I wanted to write just a little small white paper on practicing. But a lot of people said, "Oh yeah, you should sell it. You can make so much money." I thought, "Oh, it's great. I can be like all these other people and spend $80,000 on publishing something and spend the rest of my life flogging it at conventions." So I decided that it is. So I decided to give away my book for free. But what I was advertising really there was myself, because I knew that even though everyone would read it, that there would be some people that might be interested in working with me. And I very cleverly embedded some links to register for my studio. And that was my way of monetizing it, because I realized that if I worked it really hard, I could make about $30 to $50 a month in advertising. It's like, where's that going to get me? But at the same time, if I even got one student, that's a couple of $1,000s a year if I could teach them privately. So I was able to fill my studio through giving away my book. And I interviewed this student from Taiwan and their parents, and just came to Toronto, and they called me up, and I said, "There are other teachers that are closer to you up in Markham. Why do you want to come all the way down here?" I said, "Well, we read your blog when you were in Taiwan, and we were glad to hear that you live in Toronto." And that's a great way of creating a project can pay off for you in other ways down the road.
Any other questions? Priscilla.
First, Mr. Fuller, thank you. I'm pretty sure I learned about Dash Bar through your blog.
I know, I'm very careful too.
And my question is, when you finished school and you were working as a collaborative pianist in your respective communities, and you decided to start your first project or organization, what was some of your biggest hurdles, either in balancing the work or just simply trying to learn a new skill, which we've covered some of it, but were there any surprising items that came up?
I can answer that. One of the things I think it's really important for those of you that are going to go down the staff pianist route is that you want to branch out into teaching as soon as possible, or doing something else besides just being that pair of hands at the piano. And that it's one of the ways to grow your career is to be known not just as a player, but being able to teach as well. So that's one of the things that Dr. Barr was really clear to tell me, like when I initially told her that I got my first staff job. And so I really actively sought that out, and that's what created a lot of teaching opportunities for me, initially in Vancouver. But I kind of felt, I got to this position where I wanted to play for professionals, so I wasn't satisfied anymore just playing for really great students for the rest of my career, which is why I took a gigantic risk in 2002, potentially ruinous. It wasn't, fortunately, but I quit both the University of British Columbia and the Vancouver Academy of Music within a month of each other and moved to Toronto, my wife and I, with no work. And I was just merely hoping that the skills I had learned would allow me to get a job as a staff pianist. And it did initially, certain holes in my schedule, and I think that's where I really had to do some thinking, is that, you know, am I going to do this and have a patchy kind of career doing really amazing gigs but without that much money, or am I going to start to create something new? And in many ways, having a downtime in your career can be really useful, because they can open up a lot of cognitive time for thinking about new things that you haven't got time to think about when you're busy. So that's something that's useful to be able to use.
I think what you're hearing, students, current students, is that a life in music is one full of imagination, coupled with a great deal of courage, and faith in oneself and in what one has learned, and in one's ability to roll with the punches, land on your feet. Something will happen. Something good will happen. But you have to prepare yourself to meet opportunity when it knocks. And that, I think, is what all of these wonderful folks are saying. Since you all have been so gracious and staying, yes? Okay, now how many minutes did you build into it? We are now 26 minutes over. I thank you all for being here. It was a delight to welcome you. I will head to my office if anybody cares to come and hang out, or not. Please do not feel. I look forward to seeing some of you at the concert at 1:30 in Hatch. Those of you who have yet to see it, it's in the new Eastman East Wing, and I believe you will be delighted at the new space, which we desperately needed. And again, to reiterate, I'm at the banquet tonight, and if any of you are, I think we should commandeer a bunch of tables and have it.
Are you going to maybe ask for some tables? Because
well, I'm going to try, but I don't know if it's possible, but when I go back to the building, I will do something about it.
All right, because I would like to be at your table.
I thank you so much. I thank our panelists, and most especially, I thank all of you wonderful former and present students for being the people you are, for having the excitement about your lives and your wonderful field of music, and long may you prosper and pass it on.
And the great pride we have in being alums of Eastman. It has remained, I mean, I'm here at my 60th reunion, and my husband and I were made dual piano team here, and we had great careers. He passed away in '08, I'm sorry to say, but we established a nonprofit concert series that is in Greensboro, and you know, it's from all of our love and contacts and great pride.
Thanks. And that gives you students hope for the future, because as everybody's been saying, the contacts at Eastman are really quite extraordinary.
Yes.
And it's true, and I was going to say, if there's someone that you find that you play particularly well with, even if you lose track of that person for a few years, that person will come back to you. And it's happened to me recently. I've gotten reacquainted, and
good.
And I can't say how many times I've had, especially early living in Texas, someone would call me and they'd say, I don't know you at all, but I heard you went to Eastman. Can you do X, Y, Z? I mean, now that I've been there for 13 years, it's a lot of working with the same people again, or I heard you worked with this person and really liked you, et cetera. But yeah, I literally would have some people call and just on the Eastman name.
I have a final story about Eastman. I was in the Whole Foods line.
Oh.
I looked all nappy. I had just worked out, and I had a really old Eastman t-shirt on.
Oh.
And the guy in front of me, he looked at my t-shirt. He said, oh, you went to Eastman? And he got on his knees and bowed down to everyone was looking at my t-shirt.
Did you go to Juilliard?
On that happy note, thank you for a delightful morning. We'll see you in a little while.
Thank you, Keith.
One of the things I think it's really important for those of you that are going to go down the staff pianist route is that you want to branch out into teaching as soon as possible, or doing something else besides just being that pair of hands at the piano. And that it's one of the ways to grow your career is to be known not just as a player, but being able to teach as well. So that's one of the things that Dr. Barr was really clear to tell me, like when I initially told her that I got my first staff job. And so I really actively sought that out, and that's what created a lot of teaching opportunities for me, initially in Vancouver. But I kind of felt, I got to this position where I wanted to play for professionals. So I wasn't satisfied anymore just playing for really great students for the rest of my career, which is why I took a gigantic risk in 2002, potentially ruinous. It wasn't, fortunately, but I quit both the University of British Columbia and the Vancouver Academy of Music within a month of each other and moved to Toronto, my wife and I, with no work. And I was just merely hoping that the skills I had learned would allow me to get a job as a staff pianist. And it did initially. But again, there were certain holes in my schedule, and I think that's where I really had to do some thinking, is that, you know, am I going to do this and have a patchy kind of career doing really amazing gigs but without that much money, or am I going to start to create something new? And in many ways, having a downtime in your career can be really useful, because they can open up a lot of cognitive time for thinking about new things that you haven't got time to think about when you're busy. So that's something that's useful to be able to use.
I think what you're hearing, students, current students, is that a life in music is one full of imagination, coupled with a great deal of courage, and faith in oneself and in what one has learned, and in one's ability to roll with the punches, land on your feet. Something will happen. Something good will happen. But you have to prepare yourself to meet opportunity when it knocks. And that, I think, is what all of these wonderful folks are saying. Since you all have been so gracious and staying, yes? Okay, now how many minutes did you build into a... We are now 26 minutes over. I thank you all for being here. It was a delight to welcome you. I will head to my office if anybody cares to come and hang out, or not. Please do not feel. I look forward to seeing some of you at the concert at 1:30 in Hatch. Those of you who have yet to see it, it's in the new Eastman East Wing, and I believe you will be delighted at the new space, which we desperately needed. And again, to reiterate, I'm at the banquet tonight, and if any of you are, I think we should commandeer a bunch of tables and have it.
Are you going to maybe ask for some tables? Because
well, I'm going to try, but I don't know if it's possible. But when I go back to the building, I will do something about it.
All right, because I would like to be at your table.
I thank you so much. I thank our panelists, and most especially, I thank all of you wonderful former and present students for being the people you are, for having the excitement about your lives and your wonderful field of music, and long may you prosper and pass it on.
And the great pride we have in being alums of Eastman. It has remained, I mean, I'm here at my 60th reunion, and my husband and I were made dual piano team here, and we had great careers. He passed away in '08, I'm sorry to say, but we established a nonprofit concert series that is in Greensboro, and you know, it's from all of our love and contacts and great pride.
Thanks. And that gives you students hope for the future, because as everybody's been saying, the contacts by Eastman are really quite extraordinary.
Yes.
And it's true, and I was going to say, if there's someone that you find that you play particularly well with, even if you lose track of that person for a few years, that person will come back to you. And it's happened to me recently. I've gotten reacquainted, and
good.
And I can't say how many times I've had, especially early living in Texas, someone would call me and say, I don't know you at all, but I heard you went to Eastman. Can you do X, Y, Z? I mean, now that I've been there for 13 years, it's a lot of working with the same people again, or I heard you worked with this person and you would like to, etc. But yeah, I literally would have some people call and just on the Eastman name.
I have a final story about Eastman. I was in the Whole Foods line.
Oh.
I looked all nappy. I had just worked out, and I had a really old Eastman t-shirt on.
Oh.
And the guy in front of me, he looked at my t-shirt, he said, "Oh, you went to Eastman?" And he got on his knees and bowed down to and everyone was looking at my t-shirt.
Did you go to Juilliard?
On that happy note, thank you for a delightful morning. We'll see you in a little while.
Thank you, Keith.